Trigger turned her head toward it. Lyad and Flam both stood at the far side of the room. Their expressions were unhappy. "I don't like at all," Quillan said, "what's been going on here. Not one bit. Which is why Big Boy got the neck broken finally. Can the rest of us take a hint?" "Certainly," the Ermetyne said. "So the Flam girl quits oogling those guns on the shelf and stays put, or they'll amputate a leg. First Lady, you come up to the table and get Trigger unclamped." Trigger realized her eyes had fallen shut again. She left them that way for a moment. There was motion near her, and the wrist clamps came off in turn. Lyad moved down to her feet. "That fancy looking gun is Trigger's?" Quillan inquired. "Yes," said Lyad. "Is that what happened to Pilli and the other gent out there?" "Yes." "Imagine," said Quillan thoughtfully. Got something to seal up the clothes?" "Yes," Lyad said. "Bring it here, Flam." "Toss it, Flam," cautioned Quillan. "Remember the leg." Lyad's hands did things to the clothes at her back. Then they went away. "You can sit up now, Trigger," Quillan's voice informed her loudly. "Sort of slide down easy off the table and see if you can stand." Trigger opened her eyes, twisted about, slid her legs over the edge of the table, came down on her feet and stood. "I want my gun and the handbag," she announced. She saw them again then on the shelf, walked over and picked up the plasmoid container. She looked inside, snapped it shut, and slung the strap over her shoulder. She picked up the Denton, looked at its setting, spun it and turned. "First Lady," she said. Lyad went white around her lips. Quillan made some kind of startled sound. Trigger shot. Flam ran at her then, screaming, arms waving, eyes wild and green like an animal's. Trigger half turned and shot again. She looked at Quillan. "Just stunned," she explained. She waited. Quillan let his breath out slowly. "Glad to hear it." He glanced down at Pluly. "Purse was open," he remarked significantly. "Uh-huh," Trigger agreed. "How's the doohickeys?" She laughed. "Safe and sound. Believe me." "Good," he said. He still looked somewhat puzzled. "Put the eye on Belchy for a few seconds then. We're taking Lyad along. I'll have to carry her now." "Right," Trigger said. She felt rather jaunty at the moment. She put the eye on Belchik. Belchik moaned. They started out of the little room, Pluly in the van, clutching his towel. The Ermetyne, dangling loosely over Quillan's left shoulder, looked fairly gruesomely dead. "You walk this side of me, Trigger," Quillan said. "Still all right?" She nodded. "Yes." Actually, she wasn't quite. It was mainly a problem with her thoughts, which showed a tendency to move along in odd little leaps and bounds, with short stops in between, as if something were trying to freeze them up. But if it was going to be like the first time, she should last till they got to wherever they were going. Halfway across the room, she saw the golden thing like a huge furry sack on the carpet and shivered. "Poor Pilli," she said. "Alas," Quillan said politely. "I gather you didn't just stun Pilli." She shook her head. "Couldn't," she said. "Too big. Too fast." "How about the other one?" "Oh, him? Stunned. He's an investigator. They thought he was dead, though. That's what scared Lyad and Flam." "Yeah," Quillan said thoughtfully. "It would." Another section of wall hanging had folded aside, and a wide door stood open behind it. They went through the door and turned into a mirrored passageway, Pluly still tottering rapidly ahead. "Might keep that gun ready, Trigger," Quillan warned. "We just could get jumped here. Don't think so, though. They'd have to get past the Commissioner." "Oh, he's here too?" She didn't hear what Quillan answered because things faded out around then. When they faded in again, the passageway with the mirrors had disappeared, and they were coming to the top of a short flight of low, wide stairs and into a very beautiful room. This room was high and long, not very wide. In the center was a small, square swimming pool, and against the walls on either side was a long row of tall, square crystal pillars through which strange lights undulated slowly. Trigger glanced curiously at the nearest pillar. She stopped short. "Galaxy!" she said, startled. Quillan reached back and grabbed her arm with his gun hand. Keep moving, girl. That's just how Belchik keeps his harem grouped around him when he's working. Not too bad an idea. It does cut down on the chatter. This is his office.
Office?
Then she saw the large business desk with prosaic standard equipment, which stood on the carpet on the other side of the pool. They moved rapidly past the pool, Quillan still hauling at her arm. Trigger kept staring at the pillars they passed. Long-limbed, supple and languid, they floated in their crystal cages in tinted, shifting lights, eyes closed, hair drifting about their faces. "Awesome, isn't it?" Quillan's voice said.
"Yes," said Trigger. "Awesome. One in each. He is a pig. They look drowned."
"He is, and they aren't," said Quillan. "Very lively girls when he lets them out. Now around this turn and oops!" Pluly had reached the turn at the end of the row of pillars, moaned again and fallen forwards. "Fainted," Quillan said. "Well, we don't need him anymore. Watch your step, Trigger. Dead one just behind Pluly." Trigger stretched her stride and cleared the dead one behind Pluly neatly. There were 3 more dead ones lying inside the entrance to the next big room. She went past them, feeling rather dreamy. The sight of a squat black subtub parked squarely on the thick purple carpeting ahead of her with its canopy up didn't strike her as unusual. Then she saw that the man leaning against the canopy, a gun in one hand, was Commissioner Tate. She smiled. She waved her hand at him as they came up.
"Hi, Halati."
"Hi yourself," said the Commissioner. He asked Quillan, "How's she doing?" "Not bad," Quillan said. "A bit ta-ta at the moment. Double dose of Ceradim by the smell of it. Had a little trouble here, I see." "A little," the Commissioner acknowledged. "They went for their guns." "Very uninformed gentleman," said Quillan. He let Lyad's limp form slide off his shoulder and bent forward to lower into the subtub's back seat. Trigger had been waiting for a chance to get into the conversation. "Just who," she demanded now, frowning, "is a bit ta-ta at the moment?" "You," said Quillan. "You're doped, remember? You'll ride up front with the Commissioner. Here." He picked her up, plasmoid purse and all, and set her down on the front seat. Halati Tate, she discovered then, was already inside. Quillan swung down into the seat behind her. The canopy snapped shut above. The Commissioner shifted the tub's controls. In the screens, the room outside vanished. A darkness went rushing downwards past them. A thought suddenly popped to mind again, and Trigger burst into tears. The Commissioner glanced over at her. "What's the matter, Trigger girl?"
"I'm so sorry I killed Pilly. He screamed."
Then her mind froze up with a jolt, and thinking stopped completely. Quillan reached over the back of the seat and eased her over on her side. "Got to her finally," he said. He sat down again. He brooded a moment. "She shouldn't get so disturbed about that Pilly thing," he remarked then. "It wouldn't have lived anyway." "Eh?" the Commissioner said absently, watching the screens. "Why not?" "Its brains," Quillan explained, "were too far apart." The Commissioner blinked. "It's getting to you too, son," he said. End of chapter 22.